So my daughter, after everything I've done for her, I have this giant inheritance, and you know what she's saying? She's saying she needs it. She wants it. She's demanding that I give it to her. Well, you know what? I did give it to her. And when I did, she ghosted me. I could not contact her or anything. She thought that she won. Until she found out that, I changed my will.
It's a long story, and I want to share it so that you can all give suggestions. What I did is right or not. I took away all the inheritance from my daughter. And yes, it may seem abysmal, but there's a reason behind it. Let me tell you the whole story, shall I? In my early 50s, I was going to relive my life. For the past years, I've been working with one of the most reputable organizations for more than 3 decades. My commitment was not questionable, yet due to unprevailing circumstances, I do have very little time with my family. Although, there were years when I was not having enough time to make a single call to my family. Hats off to my wife Raya, who did not complain. My loyalty and commitment towards, the state office was undeniable, and I could probably work for the next few years, but something happened that changed me forever. Behind my presence, I knew that my wife is raising a wonderful daughter, Lara, but Raya's death changed everything, and I'm still struggling to get to know my daughter. In this life, what I could expect from my own daughter to betray me? In fact, I was never ready to accept this horrific misfortune that I considered Lara as my second love, as the first one was her mother, Raya. She was a beautiful woman, the woman with whom I spent the best years of my life with. We laughed together, even facing all the ups and downs on a very minimal road. And, apart from tons of good memories, we raised an incredible daughter. For years, I've been seeing a reflection of Raya and my little daughter. Raya and I and Lara were a perfect little family, until one day Raya fell ill. It was a terrible day, and I still remember that it was a hot summer morning. I was at work dealing with some of the major documents, and I was about to be present in the very next term. The Chief of Defense of the States was coming to the office just to handle some chores, and, these tasks were intended to be done. I left the home early that day, and Laura was about to get herself ready and making her best to catch the very first bus that'll drive her straight to the high school, and I still remember that Raya and I had rice porridge with some of the steamed bacon and orange juice that day. We had a little chit-chat like it was normal, and I left earlier. While I was getting my hands done on the tremendously exhausting task, I received some calls on my phone. You see, the phone kept on ringing as it was not an official number, and I totally refrained from picking up. I gathered my attention and began to work while switching off my phone. At the very moment, my assistant, Carrie, she walked in with a phone in her right hand and the documented file in another. "Sir, you need to take this call," Carrie said while mumbling her words. "Carrie, please take care of it," I said without even looking at her. She stood closer and whispered in my ear, and as soon as she told me that Raya was at the hospital, I left the task immediately at the table and rushed straight to the hospital. Rushing down to the emergency hallway to the ICU, seeing the love of my life take her last breath. I could not even believe how terrible that day turned out. The doctor told me that she had a brain tumor, and it was her last stage. There's no other option than surgery or letting her die peacefully. The doctors were not so hopeful about the surgery, and their attitudes were crystal clear. I turned towards Laura, and she was there in one corner giving me a horrific look. I stepped closer, and she almost yelled at me. I can still hear those words ringing in my head. "There's no need for you. You might have picked up your damn phone up instead." Lara yelled with teary eyes rolling down her cheeks as she rushed towards the ICU where Raya was kept. Lara and I were waiting impatiently. For the very first time, we were not hearing her voice. Instead, there were only multiple lines on the apparatus showing her heart rate, brain activity accompanied by the breathing pattern. Raya opened up her eyes, and I went in. She said her final words and asked me to take care of Lara. I could not see her like this, and my heart was immense in agony. How can she leave me like this? I wanted to scream, and I wanted her to invigorate to me the whole life. But she was leaving, and there was nothing that I could do. She closed her eyes and never woke up. Since that day, Lara and I were alone, and we stood alongside each other. And Lara grew to be a beautiful, young, ambitious woman just like her mother. This is what I dreamt of, but the reality was way more different than that. After Raya, Laura was alone at home as a young teenager, and taking a look, I offered to let her settle in the hostel. She seemed happy there. As her guardian, I was giving her a monthly allowance, but every single month I used to get, a message from her to increase it. Laura was always complaining about the food, saying it's such a mess, for which she needs money so she could eat something healthy, and in the next month there could be another reason, and then another one, and then another one. I knew it was too hard for her, so I did not utter a word, but things went out of hand. Within 6 years, Laura's allowance has increased up to a few $1,000s. It was not convenient for me to carry things, so I asked Lara if she should get a job or something. I just want her to be independent, but she began to give me very lame excuses. I knew that things won't work, like I said, so I began to reduce her monthly allowance, so she might consider her decision again. But Lara has something else on her mind. On the weekends when we were about to gather for dinner, Lara began to drop the dinner and often make an excuse. As her father, it was my duty to communicate that she's an adult and seriously needs to take her life seriously. On my working days, I took a day off and went straight to Lara's hostel where she was staying. Lara stood in the very right corner without saying a word. "I think we should talk," I asked her with a lovable smile, and there was no answer from Lara. It was evident that she was flustered. "I know you're mad, my love. Well, you're mad because I decreased the allowance, but I have good news. I'm taking retirement so you could come back home and this hostel episode can end." I asked her to come home with me, and for a moment Lara gathered some facts in her mind. "You're leaving your job. Does it mean I have to do the job?" Oh, wait. What you want from me? I'm the fool who'll go for a job and take care of you. Are you expecting something like that from me? Lara yelled at me, and I said, "No, love. I know that you want to complete your graduation, and I know you want your stuff, but I was just hoping that why not can we just spend some time together?" Well, I somehow convinced her to get her home. Meanwhile, Lara considered this the very perfect opportunity to place her opinion. "Before going home, I want you to agree to something with me," Lara said. And I said, "Yes, what is it, dear?" "You will reconsider my monthly allowance, only then will I come home." Lara placed a condition, and I accepted as I want my daughter home. We settled down at home, and the only thing among us was a conflict over money. I thought about bringing my daughter home. It would fix the gap between me and her, but unfortunately, things have grew even worse. I was insanely frustrated by her. One day, she got a decent man at home to marry. It was Liv, a lawyer by profession. And surprisingly, his mother Tiara and I were in graduate school together. Liv seemed to be pretty decent of a guy with a progressive career at the law firm. I was happy for my baby girl, and after meeting his family, I was assured that this is the perfect man for Lara. I gave my consent and the two of them got married. Lara wore her mother's wedding dress and she looked absolutely stunning. I remembered the first time I saw her mother Rhea wearing a crystal white gown. I stepped into the bridal room with some papers signed by me. "Can I come in, love?" I asked, wearing the same tuxedo I wore on my wedding day. "Yes, father." I asked everyone to leave the room as this was the time to say something really incredible to my daughter. I told Lara that her mother's last wish was to see you in this wedding gown, wavering your beauty and undoubtedly you have embraced to your deceased mother. I handed her the official legal papers in a thin yellow folder. Lara asked about the papers and what's the purpose of giving her even without opening them up. I told her that these are the papers of inheritance and that from now on, she will be in charge of 40% of the total inheritance. Lara was speechless, and all she could think about was the leftover inheritance, including the $1 million gratuity, along with some priceless staple properties. Lara was about to add something, but I prevented another talk as the time had come to walk down the aisle. Lara walked down the aisle, married the absolute love of her life, and the two of them settled to the next street. Until one day, Lara mockingly asked me what I'm gonna do with the rest of the 60% of the inheritance. I told her that the money is for my grandchild, and once he or she comes, they will have it. Since Lara was an ambitious woman and there's no chance of getting a baby right now, I could not believe what I was hearing from Lara. She was asking me to give up the rest of the inheritance so that she could have it all. I could not understand why she was being absolutely so ridiculously selfish. But, well, after all, she already had 40% of the total inheritance, and that was a substantial amount of money. I tried to reason with her, explaining that the rest of the money was meant for my grandchild, and I could not just give it away. But Lara would not listen. She kept insisting that she deserved more, and that she could put the money to better use than I ever could. As the argument continued, I could feel my frustration mounting. I could not believe that she was willing to sacrifice our relationship for the sake of money. "I don't understand why you're being so stubborn, Dad." That's what she said, and frustration was clear in her voice. "You've already given me 40% of the inheritance. Why can't you just give me the rest?" "It's not that simple, Lara. I can't just give it away." "But I could do so much with that money. I could start my own business, travel the world, and do something meaningful with my life. You're not even going to be around to use that money, so why not let me have it?" Wow. Eventually, things reached an absolute boiling point, and Lara stormed out the house angry and upset. I was left alone to ponder the situation, wondering what I've done wrong. I knew that I could not give up the rest of the inheritance, but I also did not want to lose Lara. Over the next few days, I tried to reach out to her, but she refused to talk to me. It was clear that our relationship had been irreparably damaged. The whole situation left me feeling heartbroken and betrayed. I can only hope that someday she's going to realize the true value of family and relationships, and that money can never replace them. But who knows what Lara was after. After that day, the whole thing related to inheritance began to come up every evening, and somewhere I was convinced to reconsider my wish. After taking a pause, I called one of my friends at the firm and asked him to prepare the documents. A week later, I received the documents and I held them with myself as I was waiting for Lara's birthday. But everything turned out to be different. It was about a month after her 31st birthday, and I was excited to announce that I had given her the rest of the inheritance, but neither did anyone know about it. One day, Lara came to me with her medical reports. Her face was pale and evenly imputed with hopelessness. She told me that she had endometriosis and her body could not carry a child. Well, since these years all she could ever wish for was a child with Liv, but hopelessly there was nothing to be expected by now. I comforted her that they should not give up and look for other options. I was convinced that Lara and Liv will not have kids, as the last thing Lara did was show me her medical report that clearly stated that she cannot be a mother. As for me, I was not sure how long I was going to live. Without wasting any time, I stood up, went to my room, and handed her the file. Lara opened up the document, and it says that by now she'll be in charge of 100% of my inheritance. She smiled, got up, and left. After a few days, Liv and Lara flew straight to the USA. I waited for them to get some news, but days passed and there was no call on the phone. I called Lara many times, but she did not respond, and by now I was so worried that I called Liv. Well, he didn't answer either. I called Tiara, Liv's mother, to get to know about Liv and Lara, as she might have some idea about it. Tiara told me that Liv and Lara have settled abroad for some time, and Tiara told me that she's in contact with Lara, but why is Lara not contacting me? I was in a rage and questioning my upbringing and what I really had done with that child of mine, or was it money after all those years that she was after? Update number 1. I know all you want me to investigate the whole scenario in detail, and that's what I'm going to do. I want to know all the inner intentions that I'm unable to do, and I will not let the love of my daughter keep blinding me. I could not hold myself and flew straight to the US to meet my daughter. Liv's mother assisted me with the address, and I reached the destination. There was a celebration going on. The lavish house was decorated, and I don't know what they were celebrating. All of a sudden, the only thing I could see was a board saying baby shower. Is Lara expecting a child? Guess what? They fooled me. While I was still in shock and looking at the board, Lara went to me with a decent smile and asked me if she and I could have a chit-chat together. At that time, do I have a choice? I wanted to listen, and I did listen to her, but instead, I began and she handed me over the ultrasound, and I looked down at the ultrasound in my hand, and my heart racing. Lara was expecting a child. I couldn't believe it. She had lied to me all along. Lara, how could you do this? I said with my voice shaking with anger and disappointment. How could you lie to me about not being able to have a child just so you could get the rest of your inheritance? I wanted to start my own business and live my own life. I thought this was the way. Lara, you lied to me. You deceived me just so you could get your hands on that money. How could you be so selfish? You've hurt me more than you can imagine. And I trusted you, Lara. I trusted you with everything, and you've just thrown it away. The room fell silent as Lara and I stood there, tears streaming down both of our faces, and the sound of the party outside seemed to be fading away as we grappled with the reality of what just happened. My heart sank as I gazed down at that ultrasound in my hand, and all my anger, frustration, and disappointment churned inside me, threatening to burst out at any moment. My body trembled with overwhelming emotions as I struggled to comprehend exactly what was happening. My mind raced as I thought about all the times I trusted Lara, all the times I believed her lies. How could she have been so deceitful? Had she no sense of morality or decency? Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision as I realized the magnitude of her betrayal. You see, I felt as though I had lost my daughter, the one person I had always loved and trusted above all others. The pain was so overwhelming, and I did not know how to cope with it. Update number 2. So, after my previous update, all of you were assuming what happened next. Here's the latest update. The news hit me hard, and it took a toll on my emotional and mental state. I could not believe that my own daughter had deceived me and was after my wealth all along. It was that I decided to take a legal course of action to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I hired the best attorneys and legal advisors to help me with the case. We dug up all the necessary legal documentations and went through the whole inheritance process again. It was a long, grueling process, but we were determined to get what was rightfully mine. During the legal process, I had to prove that Lara had lied to me about her inability to conceive. I had to provide exact, solid evidence to show that her miscarriage was a result of her actions and not because of any health issues. The day of the court proceedings arrived, and I found myself standing before the judge. My heart was a-pounding in my chest. The courtroom was packed, filled with lawyers, reporters, and curious onlookers. I've never been in a courtroom before, and seeing my daughter in front of me, it gave me an intense agony and kept reminding me of her deep betrayal. There was an emotional conflict that I was struggling with, and the pain was sprawling over my heart. The lawyers representing Lara tried their best to argue that the inheritance should remain in her possession. But I was prepared. I'd hired the best lawyers in the city, and they presented a very solid case that left no room for doubt. I presented all the documents, including the legal papers I've given to Lara earlier, and the evidence that proved my daughter's true intentions. I explained how exactly Lara and her husband had planned to take the money and just move away, how they had no intention of fulfilling my wife's last wish, and how they had used me for their own selfish purposes. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judge had no choice but to rule in my favor. I remember feeling a mixture of relief and sadness as the verdict was read out loud. I knew then I could never forget what Lara had done to me. No matter how much I loved her, I could not ignore the betrayal and the hurt that she had caused. It would take time to come to terms with it, but all the scars of the past would never fully heal, and I knew that the memory of my daughter's betrayal would haunt me for the rest of my life. I still think about what could have been and how things could have been different if Lara had been honest with me from the beginning. But in the end, I realized that sometimes the people we love the most can also hurt us the most. I learned a valuable lesson through this whole ordeal, and I'll never forget it. She left me entirely. Well, good luck to her. What I can say over this one is that she deserved it in my opinion, and I have a valuable lesson in my life. Well, it's over.
Well, all I want to say is, luckily, OP was able to get the money back through the court and the inheritance back, but man, what an absolute headache to have to deal with. Your own child basically goes behind your back and betrays you and just tries to run away. What would you guys do? Say, for instance, you were in OP's very unique position, and this exact scenario was playing out. Do you take her to court, like OP did, or do you try something even more dramatic or petty? What is it that you do? Drop your comments down below in the comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day. If that sounds like something you're into, or you enjoyed the story you just heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I hope you guys have a fantastic one, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!